programs under the administration, you'll see that there's an increase of amount that's revised budget, but this is unusual because this one is almost over $1 million. Where did they get that $1 million for that administration? That's my question, because I understand that we constantly get funding throughout the year, and sometimes it's an indirect cost allocation. And these ones is, if you go from, let's say the second one, the housing and infrastructure development, it's 2.4 million, and then now it's 2.5 million. So they roughly got about under $100,000, and that's probably from some kind of savings, maybe, or anything. That's minimal. That's something that's okay. But I'm concerned about where did DCD get the extra over $1 million from the original budget, and now they have a $3.1 million budget. And if you look in the page 4, see, this is what the community development administration got $1.6 million of general funds and $13,443 in indirect costs that is allocated to them last year in FY 2023. And that's that. If you add those two numbers, it comes up to $1.9 million. And we see that in the original budget. But where did they get their extra $1 million from? That's my question. And why did you get it? What was that a supplemental request that you got through a UUFP last year? Because that's a huge amount of money. That's not just like usually indirect cost dollars come out in January, February every year, and then they're given to the programs in March or April of every fiscal year. And that indirect cost can be, I mean, budget finance usually gets about $13,000 to $14,000. RBC gets about the same. Programs like the controller's office gets about $800,000 to $900,000 because they utilize the most from getting the indirect cost payment. But my question is, where did that $1 million come from?
So the way I read the budget status report, it appears that some of those funds might have come in under contractual services. So right at this time, when we had reviewed this, we did look at the proposed 2024 general funds and indirect cost fund funds that were currently appropriated to the 1, 2, 3, 4 departments under division of community development. So when we looked at the numbers and we went off of the budget summary by fund type, so when we go more into the budget status report, this is the current operation. So I take it that sometime throughout this past fiscal year, that Division of Economic Development had an increase of some money somewhere. But since taking this leadership position, I do not have any recollection of a legislation that was dropped by the current Resources and Development Committee to give additional funds to the Division of Community Development. So yeah. I presume that it might have been prior to us taking oath of office.
Speaker David, I think the largest increase that can be identified is in that administration budget.
Yeah, under contractual services.
Maybe Office of Management budget. Do we have anyone, Ms. Francisco, do we have anyone that's currently in the office right now that we can have research that and then get on the call?
Madam Chair, everybody's out. I think there's some at HESI and there's some at LLC. So there's nobody at the office.
Okay.
Can I give
time over to Mr. Castillo?
Good morning, Madam Chair, Kat, for the time, and Honorable Damon. Good question. Thank you. What I was told, that additional $2 million that we got last year was for administration 3 to start the process of that. But the actual cost is going to be more than that. So we need more money for that, so, but it's in the budget again this year for administration. I think that's what it is.
Yeah, so if you look according to the budget, under Exhibit B, there is increase in contractual services and assistance. So I presume that they might have gotten some additional funds in the first quarter of FY 2023.
Sorry.
Okay. Robert Willie.
Hi, Mr. Willie, good morning.
Good morning. I have the answer to the question if I'm allowed to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Willie. Yes, the floor is yours.
Okay, for the record, my name is Robert Willie, County Manager for Office of Controller. So in Business Unit 108001, there's an amount of $1,089,896.38 that was carried over from FY 22 into 23. And those are all the encumbrances, so contractual obligations that were encumbered at the end of the year got carried over into the new fiscal year. So that's what the added $1 million is. So just to clarify the question that Honorable Delegate had, Honorable Delegate Damon had. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Willie.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Williams. And that's a carryover amount that was from FY 22 to FY 2023. There was an instance to spend that money, and as of right now, you still have almost $1 million in there that you haven't spent. You see that now. In order for us to fund the budget, for your budget to be approved through the process, you're recommending this, your new budget to us. And your new budget that you're saying is, last year you got $1.9 million. And this year's budget right now, just for the admin costs, is $1.1 million. So, are you going to ask RDC, or have you asked RDC, or have you asked the delegate to do a carryover for you?
Mr. Castillo.
Madam Chair, thank you for the time. Honorable Seth Damon, no, we did not.
Are you going to?
I believe we're going to have to.
And you know that if you ask for a carryover, you're gonna have to ask a waiver of 90% of the nomination council to approve that. So 2 delegates don't want to approve your carryover, you could jeopardize the full budget. If you're going to ask for one.
If I may respond to that, so it did come up during the Resources and Development Committee budget meeting last week. And at this time, just with what was brought to us last week, the Resources and Development Committee wasn't favorable of the carryover. Because again, one of the conditions is that there is a legislation that have been dropped by either 24th or 23rd council to prevent any more carryovers by departments within the division. And so at this time, that was really not favorable to Resources Development Committee to request for carryover. But there is an argument that I like to make is the chapter staff within the 5 agencies, there has been shortfalls this year for French benefits, to cover French benefits. And so what initially the team did from DCD was take the personnel savings costs with these vacant positions throughout FY 23 and use that as a supplement to fund the French benefit for the chapter staff under Administrative Service Center. But that was denied from the Resources and Development Committee members. and requested Division of Economic or Community Development to look for alternative funding to supplement for shortfall for French benefit for the employees under at the chapter level. So with that, Mr. Castillo, being in his new capacity as a division director for 7 months now, wanted to utilize that to go towards the shortfall funding for the chapter administration staff. So again, that was pretty much the plan going forward. But again, yes, it does bring, concern, and it was reiterated to them that the Form 2 with the performance, the quarter performance that was read to us really is a report card to the departments under the division to say how they're performing. So as you could see, CHID is at 2.80, kind of close to the meet the expectation, but still need some improvement. So overall, we did let the division know that we're really scrutinizing on these grades, that they need to fulfill these goals and objectives that were stipulated in their Form 2. So again, that's just going to be my response back to Speaker Damon, and back to you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, good morning. For the record, we have our delegate today and also our delegate who is also speaking today. I believe we also have delegates on right now. And for the time being, delegates that are able to. Next, let's see. Okay, thank you, Chair Jesus, for the elaboration and discussion. So now we're going to turn the time over to Chair Jesus' presentation on the Division of Community Development, and also Mr. Calvin Castillo, the Division Director.
Madam Chair Parish, and also to members of the Budget and Finance Committee. Good morning, and also to the legislative staff. And also I'd like to greet good morning to Division of Community Development staff, and also to the attendees in the room here today. So as Chair of Resource and Development Committee, we come to you with the resolution for Division of Economic or Community Development 2024 budget for operation of the 4 departments, which are Community Housing and Infrastructure Development, Administrative Service Center, Capital Project Management Department, and Navajo Addressing Authority, along with the 5 agencies staggered across the Navajo Nation. And at this time, do you have the current legislation resolution, Cecilia? I know we did some condition of appropriation last. So when community development came before Resource and Development Committee, some changes were made in terms of the exhibit that is attached to the resolution. Okay. So right now, we had made some recommendations to the budget that was presented to the committee, where the Community Housing and Infrastructure Department decreased their budget by $969,223 to replace the shortfall funding for Eastern Navajo Agency in the amount of $471,966 or $996. The other agency that will supplement or get assistance is Fort Defiance Navajo Agency chapters at $165,737. And the other one is with Western Navajo Agency chapters at $124,307. And the last one is to Chinle Navajo Agency chapters for $207,183. And again, the recommendation for this was to meet the shortfall needs, which was addressed by Division of Community Development when they came before RDC. Now, there was some condition of appropriation that was stipulated for Division of Community Development. And as we all know that we do have the administrative service centers that replace what we had known as the local governance support centers prior years ago. And one of the main concerns was with all the issues that are going on with the 110 chapters across the Navajo Nation. And when we talk about emergency and allocating emergency fund, we've learned that only 31 chapters out of the 110 chapters had an approved emergency management plan or response plan. So one of the conditions of appropriation that was stipulated to Administrative Service Center is to have the remaining chapters to implement a emergency management plan by the end of third quarter of FY 2024. And the stipulation here out of the condition of appropriation, if not met, will withhold 5%, or the budget travel account will be decreased by 5% for Administrative Service Center. And the other area for all the general funds non-administrative subtotal, again, should have been to really analyze and relook at the current 8 service centers. And that's what was stipulated. So we kind of made some, we need some corrections, because I know one of the other conditions of appropriation should have been to have Division of Community Development Administration along with Administrative Service Center to reanalyze the current 8 administrative service centers to look at downsizing to 5 to do some cost savings, so that the savings from the 8 to the 5 service center will supplement whatever services shortfall within the administrative service centers can be supplemented to provide technical services and other services that ASC staff will provide to chapters. But that this is an area that we would need to correct, because I see under the resolution here before us, RDC AU-1923 does not have the accurate condition of appropriation that is attached as Exhibit D. So these were the 2 conditions that we had stipulated for Division of Community Development. And again, there was a recommendation that we're possibly going to not be considering the carryover request that the division's going to be taking. And right now the unmet needs is the with Navajo Addressing Authority, where they needed additional funding. And we know that this is one of the big areas that was a concern during the COVID, and that there's a lot of chapters that still needs to implement their rural addressing throughout the Navajo Nation. The other area was pending is the Solid Waste Management Department, which I understand has been updated in their plan of operation, but still have yet to really start executing this Solid Waste Management Department to start the groundwork to start planning and hopefully going to full staffing by next fiscal year. So right now it'll just be setting the stage for how the program or the department needs to be developed. So there were a lot of questions in regards to questions related to the CHID program in terms of meeting the needs of our constituents through the ARPA funding, as well as the Capital Project Management Department. And there has been some streamlined process that Mr. Castillo will inform the committee here this morning about, in hopes that we get a lot of these project built outs for the chapters utilizing ARPA dollars. But it was also recommended to Division of Community Development that if Plan B should not fall out with the hard deadlines that we have with US Treasury, that they would have to start looking at a Plan B and even possibly considering a Plan C strategy, so that we do not have these funds going back to number one, US Treasury, or right now RDC's recommendation, and really stands on a position that we don't want to get these funds out in another form of hardship, because should another pandemic happen years down the road, we will still be at square A if we don't fulfill these projects that were pretty much given to us in this financial obligation from US Treasury, that we need to get these projects built out. So that was one of the areas that was mentioned to the team. And again, we also had talked about Title 26 amendments, where we are going to be looking at a work session with the division as well, in hopes that a lot of the areas that we see as loopholes with Title 26 at the local level operation would hopefully be addressed. And one of the other recommendation right now that Resources and Development Committee is looking at is the regionalization concept as well, because right now, due to the limited, revenue stream and trying to seek new monies or cash inflow to the Navajo Nation, how are we able to fund a lot of these chapters? And I know that there's small chapters, medium chapters, and large chapters out there. So with a consolidation of really understanding which chapters will be categorized as small, medium, and large chapters, and based off of that, go with the old concept of the regionalization, but that would have to be a collective public effort, and also a 3-branch effort as to which way we're going to go. So again, these were some of the discussions that that we've had, and I know I missed some, but at this time, Madam Chair, I'd like to go ahead and yield the floor over to Division Director Castillo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Budget and Finance Committee. Good morning, Kat, thank you, and my sponsor, Ms. Honorable Jesus Kat, and staff. Good morning. Division of Community Development. I'm going to start with the administrative staff. Administrative wise, you'll see in the budget reports about 300,000 less. Those are the 3 positions that we're moving into the rural addressing, the new program that we're trying to start with. So that's where the 300,000 comes out from. And then the plus that's going for the unmet needs for the rural addressing for that. Then I'll go straight to the ASC side, the chapter side. As Ms. Jesus stated, that we had a shortfall of fringe benefits of the existing employees there. And what we planned was the existing AMS vacancies, we were going to cover that fringe benefit. And we proposed that, and it got shot down automatically. We were told to fix it and find some other funds to find it, because the chapters really need the AMS people that are vacant now. They need to get those people hired. So we did that, and that's where we took that special funding that was carried over to this year, at 1.9. We took it out of there and covered the fringe benefit of all the positions there. So everybody, the allocation was 11.2 for the chapters, but the need was 12.3 or 12.2. So we had that money available in there that we saw. So we used that and took it out of CHID and gave it to the chapters. That was the plan. So that's the plan we have here now. The other one is under CPMD. We have close to $1 billion worth of work. Really, the staffing should be around 4 or 5 million. We're only at 1 million. So probably in the future, we'll be asking for unmet needs or some other kinds of funds to cover some more staffing to get these projects in. We're also we're gonna put a 5-year plan together for all the projects that are out there. And a lot of standard operating procedures that we're working on, we need to start implementing. One of the biggest one is we're gonna do away with that AIA contracting method. That gives the strength or more of the height or the teeth to the architects. They kind of can dictate how they can design the buildings that the chapters are asking for. What we're gonna do is develop our own contracting system that Mr. Wasetta that we brought on board, that they worked with an NHA, and that will give us more authority of what we can have in those contracts. Right now, you have very expensive items in what they're proposing. We're trying to get the $900 a square foot down to at least 400 a square foot. That's one of our key things, so we can stretch the dollar in the future. So that's one of the methods. We're also going to use design build and also CMAR, depending on case by case of the project. Now on the CHID side, I'll go ahead and have Mr. Delegate explain what his plans are for this year. If you can allow him some time, please.
Mr. Dogger? Mr. Castillo, can you get your name for the record? Can you get your name?
Oh, Calvin Castillo. Thank you.
Yeah, hey, good morning, everyone, Chair, members of FINA committee. My name is Patrick Delguy, the Department Manager of the Community Housing Infrastructure Department. I'll go ahead and go over the Community Housing Infrastructure Department budget for fiscal year 24.
We're in a report. How are we, does the committee want to hear everyone's report? Everyone's budget? Could we get it differently yesterday?
So thank you, Shannon, for raising that. Yesterday, we received the motion and the second initially. Today, we were gonna do a report and then the motion on the second, unless the committee would like to enter into the same format we did yesterday.
Sure, we're at department and it's going to form the division director and the sponsor. We expressed yesterday. I think that we were comfortable with just presenting the things.
So we're gonna ask.
So, yeah, questions.
Okay.
Because everything's in here, right?
Right.
Does what tab yours and should have?
No, as long as it's anyway.
Thank you, Shannon. So we'll just do the overview and then if there are any specific questions in the budget, and then we'll turn it over to the department manager. Is that okay?
Okay. On the CHID budget that we presented in this budget proposal is just a little bit slight increase, but we can have that covered. So no big change or anything on that. Then the last one is the solid waste program. We really want to get that going. We're starting to see a lot of illegal dumping. And we can, that 3-day work session with Department of Energy, I brought that up to them over there. So I believe her name was Walla James. She said she can help us write grants to get the solid waste program going. So I've been in contact with some of her staff, so that's where we're going to try to hire a project specialist to do some of this research and help get the grants going. See what fund we can seek for that. So that's for the solid waste program that's in our new plan of operation. So that's kind of sums up the summary of all that for the program. Thank you.
Yeah. Chair BFC. Final comment.
Okay, Shahat Nana for Deja, and also thank you, Shaja, my dad by then. One of the things that I just wanted to expound on for CHID is that we did ask Mr. Delguy just what does CHIT do? Because if you look under their budget, they have, funding for a lot of contractual services, but under these, contracts that they, signed with subcontractors for housing improvement, they do housing renovation, they do emergency repair, they do plumbing, house wiring, meter loop inspection, and, just the minor home renovation that they've been doing, throughout, I guess, the Navajo Nation. So they still have to go through a process when they, when the client submit an application, and for that, their inspector, or carpenter would go out to the site, wherever it is within the, 3-state, the Navajo Nation, and make an assessment to see if based off of their analyses, they really are, needing the renovation. So again, the question came up because, under, the chapters, they do have a housing discretionary fund for the same, initiative as well. And it also should also provides these services. So, Resources and Development Committee was trying to understand, that a lot of the constituents at the local level through their chapter housing discretionary fund oftentimes are not being assisted. And, for that, I did, understand now that this is additional services that is being provided by CHIT, but one of the main things that's hindering the full, services and to get these funds expended is because, number one is lack of, staffing. And also there was a request for additional staffing to be added to, the CHIT program, in hopes that, number one, the money can be fully expended. Number two is to provide these, home, renovation services to our constituents in the greater part of the Navajo Nation. And I just wanted to add that as well. And then the other part under Administrative Service Center is that, we, did talk about how many chapters being sanctioned, and it was shared by the department manager that, right now there are, seven chapters that are sanctioned, meaning that they did not fulfill, utilizing their chapter dollars by abiding by the 5 management system that was adopted. And we have how many under corrective action? Was it 38 that have current corrective action plans that have been in place. But to this point, since we've taken our, role as Resources and Development Committee members, we only had 2 chapters come before Resources and Development Committee to adopt a corrective action plan and implement it, which has been Plateau chapter and Counselor chapter. So one of the recommendation, that was made to, the acting department manager, Ms. Patricia Begay, and also Division Director Castillo, is that we need the rest of the other chapters, meaning the other 36 that hasn't come before RDC, to, get an update on where they're at with the corrective action plan implementation. The reason why I say this is, chapters often, go before a committee and Budget and Finance, and where Budget and Finance has final authority to say, start executing your corrective action plan. But, as leadership, we do not go back to the chapter and request what's the status, how many of the deficiencies that Auditor General had, stipulated in the audit finding has been completed to this point. So we just want to get that information from the chapters. And then not only that, but again, they are dealing with public dollars where they're supposed to be assisting a lot of our constituents. But it has been reported to RDC that, the assistance from chapters to constituents has been very minimal, and that is a concern for us. And for the reason being, we did break down, if you look in the, FMI, the WIN system, where the public records, you go under every agency, and I calculated just Chinle Agency alone for all their chapters with the current balances that they have was $13.8 million. So again, we have $13.8 million that is just idling there for the Chinle Agency chapters. And if you add all the other agencies, we're probably at one point there was a total of $70 million, which we know is not gaining interest income. So this posed a question by Resources and Development Committee. How do we I don't know if it's to say we educate or how do we motivate our staff at the chapter level along with the chapter officials to really start going out to the community and seeing and learning and understanding and assessing who needs these assistance, because right now our main concern is just the percentage of unexpended monies that these departments have under these divisions that have been coming to Resources and Development Committee. So with that, there was also questions in areas of why is your travel expense very high, and those are some of the questions that we've been having, that that staff go out to these locations to do assessment utilizing their own POV. And we looked at how many tribal vehicles have been assigned. So, you know, with just these types of issues that we have with minimal tribal vehicles, a high turnover rate, we know that with ASC and even the other departments under CHID, and then also to even attain those individuals that have the expertise, the experience in these certain skilled positions. Those are some of the hindrance to have Division of Community Development fully execute. I'm not using that as an excuse, but we did let Division of Community Development know that we are here to assist them, whether if it's policy refinding or development of a new policy, we don't know, but we would need their assistance because it's their staff that work with these policies on a day in and day out basis. So again, we just want to make sure that they fulfill in expending these monies, you know, up to at least 80%. So again, some of these funds are also that they do have positions that are not have been fulfilled for the year as well. So again, I just wanted to put that additional comment in there. So at this time, I'd like to go ahead and yield the floor back over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, officers, and also members of the Division Community Development are also being here. Colleagues, we have a motion to take the these reports. Try to delegate member for motion for a second. Vice Chair Slater, hold the second. The motion and Vice Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the third presentation. Well, to the last point, I'm trying to think here, 13.8 million. That was returned to the agency. Divide that by 16 chapters, $60,000. If I say there's 5,000 people in my district who receive assistance, it's $172 per person. So I think, you know, we can look at these big dollar totals, but we realize we have thousands and thousands of people. And I know that under your leadership, we're going to be analyzing how do we make opportunities for assistance available in the means that we have. But as a matter of principle, and something I think of, you know, is the prerogative of our people to exercise their budgeting option at the local level, and if they elect to keep dollar amounts in certain accounts, or however, that's their prerogative. If they come to us for additional funding outside of the ordinary budgeting process, then that's where we can say, you have dollars in the account, you need to justify where you're coming back from. They're trying to enforce the principle of a certain expenditure rate for existing dollar amounts, you know, that they have in the bank. I'm a little bit uneasy with, because then we're treating, you know, what's the point of having chapter officials in the workforce? It's kind of advisory to make sure we're going to be forcing something on them. So that's just a comment. But going back to Exhibit B, the $969,000 reduction in SHID, I can understand because I see a 42% expenditure rate for year funds. That said, I know that SHID has been a pretty good performer in terms of the services that it's been able to provide for those specific types of services relative to other entities that may perform those services. So I'm a little bit hesitant to see, you know, $1 million reduction in the funding, but I can understand it if the justification is, okay, well, we have tens of millions of dollars right now, they need to focus on get that out of the missing that budget in future years as that those dollar amounts go away. But I think, you know, weatherization programs, helping elderly people with their houses fixed, things like that. To the extent that we can, we should invest as much as we can into that. We know our people. When you look at the housing stock in that, well, it's evident that people don't have the means to take care of a lot of these homes. And you can either design different types of homes where there's communal contributions to taking care of the whole place, like an apartment complex or something like that. But generally, we're averse to that, except for the younger generation. So I think there still needs to be some investment, but it should also be homeowners' responsibilities and their families. But some people are unlucky and they don't have a kid to take care of. So on the 108 numbers, 108, 2858, all the agency accounts, I want to know, is that based off of a deficiency that the Division of Community Development provided, that this was how much we need to cover these amounts, or are we adding in new positions at the chapter level? Or is this just exclusively about covering vacant AMS position? Can you just go into a little bit more detail on that? I don't want to have something where we're saying, okay, well, we're just trying to cover a shortfall in the salaries for folks, and then all of a sudden this chapter is getting an extra something, this chapter is getting an extra something, and something was negotiated behind the scenes that no one else really knows about. So I just want to have something on the record that establishes that that's hopefully not the case, and that's just based off of a precedent shortfall. If you are comfortable, okay, so that's there. And then the second to last thing is, I think you have 50,000 in the unmet needs proposal for solid waste department, and then the budget is 100,000. So I just want to confirm that the total desired ask for solid waste would be 150,000. Okay, and that is that the SWSE right here. 100,000. I didn't get enough time to go through exactly when the condition would be there. This is something that I see some lots in the back. We tried to support the last few years, getting money there and solid waste study, connecting with adjacent authorities and jurisdictions like the state of Colorado to talk about how their central government provides incentive programs to cities and counties. That's why I'm still interested in trying to provide that support to BCD. We've been able to get things in the budget the last few years to get us to this point, but I would like to see a lot more funding going into this. And so if DCD is comfortable and the program is comfortable, the committee is comfortable, let's see how we could increase this budget, because it's when I say increase, not necessarily general. We look at a short-term reallocation of ARPA dollars. That's something that I think would be a great idea. I don't have the solution there, but it's something in my voice in case between now and the comprehensive budget, we can develop something. There's just so much need in chapters to help. My chapters, quite a few of them are just, they're going to be subsidizing the cost of the bins, so people can try to step up. But the big thing where we see illegal dumping is the large items, electrical items, non-traditional items that you can't dump in the dumpster. And one of the low-hanging fruit is just to have regional opportunities to get those collected on a quarterly or whatever basis. And then when we have EPA come for us, we need to hold their feet to the fire on enforcement, because the responses we get back from them are super lackadaisical within the region. I know they're doing their best and they're overwhelmed, but they need to increase their budget. So I just want to see that cooperation. And then last on the emergency plan COAs sound good. Oh, the addressing authority. I don't understand how we can allocate $241,000 when we have tens of millions of dollars allocated to rural addressing. I think it's 50 million. Yeah, so
We need 30 or.
yeah, I actually didn't reserve. So I just really want to hear a strong justification of why we need general funds for the addressing authority, because that to me seems as clearly come out of administrative costs, clearly means 241,000. It's not $17 million. And I don't see why we can't use that. I mean, but there's $241,000 to the solid waste, which we didn't allocate in students. So those are my comments and questions. Thank you.
You guys share that? Do you all have questions?
I know, Chair Hastings, that is your presentation and, Mr. Castillo and your staff here in terms of, I'm concerned about the CHID reallocation proposal. I need clarification on, the personnel shortfall. My understanding, these are vacant positions. And so what I'm looking at is the CHID budget, and taking nearly $1 million from, what could be direct services for housing improvement to vacant positions, and so it's found. I'm not seeing the logic in it, and so I want to see what would be the impact. I understand from the notes from the committee that you agreed to that change, but I would just want to hear from you on what was that thought process, because CHID has been critical in terms of going out and doing home assessments after flooding, after emergencies in the community. And so we have seen them in our community, and I've read your monthly newsletter, and I've seen the work that they're doing in other communities across the nation. It definitely doesn't meet the need of the nation, but I thought our goal was to create that opportunity. So I would need to know what are what are the RDC priorities that were clear on what the committee and how they want to move forward, and their support for CHID. Every committee or every delegate could have a different perspective, but if we're really going to focus on improving the quality of the living situation for our community members, we have to look at CHID in that development, because COVID did not ask for a home site lease. It did not ask who was living in the home, and families and communities were greatly impacted, and they had to isolate and quarantine in substandard homes. So that is where I'm coming from, and not supporting the recommendation from RDC to fund vacant positions. I'm trying to understand the logic there, so I need to help with Carrie soon. The other area that I'm looking at is, and this is where we would need to know the RDC priorities. Because we could look at chapters, and they play a part of the expenditures and support to our Navajo people, but they're often singled out, and a lot of attention is focused in on them when they're chronically underfunded, understaffed, and have a lot of restriction. And so the nation itself needs to have a conversation about the role of local governance in either drawing down those dollars, because I would suggest that the committee and for budget and finance, if we could look at what's happening with Navajo Housing Authority, who's sitting on millions and millions of dollars, who are not able to spend their money. And so now we're not getting those federal dollars injected into Navajo Nation to meet the housing demand. So if the committee wants to focus on the chapter, I think that's the discussion of the RDC, but chair and vice chair, I would ask if as budget and finance, we could look at the housing spending continuum, looking at NHA, looking at some of the funding sources for CHID, looking at USDA grant opportunity, looking at everyone where we could start really saturating the community with the help that they need. And that's with like community assessments. That's working with everyone to make sure we're providing the support that they need. And as stated, we're here talking about general funds, which is only a small percentage of over $1 billion that Navajo Nation receives with federal state funding combined. So looking at the big picture, and if in our priorities, I think that was part of the discussion, so we could we could continue and have RDC help us supplement with their focus on at the chapter level. The other area that I wanted to talk about was, what are the notes? With the vacancies and how the money was moved. There was no allocation for Northern Navajo Agency chapters, so I'm not sure then all of those positions were fully funded, or the committee just did not take care of all of the agencies. It's not clear from what we have here. And so I think with the ARPA allocation, I do agree that we need as a committee to look at what was given for the E911. That's under public safety. And so we'll see, I think we could get an update from them and see where they're at with the ARPA funding. And if there's allowable funding to hire additional individuals. Because what we're hearing from programs is they want to hire additional personnel. And the same conversation we're talking about, you're not able to expend your money because you have vacancies and can't fill positions. So what I'm looking at now and trying to see is the priorities and unmet needs, but concerned about CHID's allocation, not and hearing what Delegate Jesus and understanding the committee on how much they provide direct services. So like I'm just looking at their budget form, they're gonna assist with housing assessments, repairs, ensure self-monitoring with federal law requirements, assist with infrastructure activity, power line, water line. Wait, am I talking about it? Yeah, sure. Assist with project management on tribally and federal funded programs, and then professional staff development. So with all of those areas, which seems that we would want to support to move that money into vacant positions for it to sit there. I'll need more information. Thank you. Sabrina.
Yeah, sure. Speaker, do you have questions? Okay. Delegate Azar, do you have any questions regarding the question that were posed or additional comments you want to offer us?
Madam Chair, thank you. And thank you, delegates, for bringing it tonight. Thank you, meeting director. Thank you very much. I got a solid waste management. This has been going on for a long time. And I'm just wondering if BGS, Services, and all the environments, they have a budget on their own that is that goes together and take care of this. I remember back when we were listening to actual places to dump our trash and to all the trash away. And it's not like to this day we're still having that same problem. So I just want to know what's happening. The other one here I want to ask about is if we're talking about Neville Nation addressing unmet needs, and again adding personnel to that. Have you gone through ARPA or ARPA helping you to fundraise that thing, or it's just coming out of all of your budget? There's a couple of questions.
Madam Chair Parrish and Vice Chair Slater and members of the Budget and Finance Committee, thank you for the questions that were posed here. And in regards to that comment regarding the analyses of the $13.8 million, again, in regards to enforcing this principle, at the RDC level, again, as oversight, it is questions that were posed by members of Resources and Development Committee, and start analyzing if this is where it would require Title 26 amendments for to change the commingling disallowable, where now chapters can hopefully, if we make amendments to Title 26, to have them start transferring funds from the restricted fund accounts to others where there might be shortfalls, whether if it's LGA, whether if it's scholarship, whether if it's housing discretionary, PEP workers, and other fund accounts that chapters have within their MIP. So with that, this is where I believe that Resources Development Committee can assist, in refinding Title 26 and how these particular funds can hopefully be transferred from one fund account to another to avoid chapters not having to hire PEP workers or not being able to assist through housing discretionary. So that was the concept behind that, analyzing how much these agencies have throughout the Navajo Nation at the chapter level. Now, the question here in regards to Exhibit B, decreasing CHID budget by $969,223. I know that my colleagues had been questioning where, number one, I know that our colleagues with Resources and Development Committee advocate on behalf of their chapters. And currently, this would probably go into the next question in regards to why the monies are coming out is in regards to the general wage adjustment that had taken place in FY23. We know that there's a general wage adjustment that was approved by the 24th Navajo Nation Council at 5%, where now it impeded on the current operation of FY23. So with that, the account maintenance specialist positions across the 5 regions now had a shortfall of their French benefit. And this is where the Resources and Development Committee had requested to have Division of Community Development go back and look at where they can take funding from. And it was recommended from the CHID program. So with that, shortfall with the general wage adjustment and trying to find French benefit, that amount was equally distributed to the 5 regions, with the exception of Northern, because Northern Agency has all their account maintenance positions filled right now, with the exception of the 4 agencies, which is Eastern, Fort Defiance, Chinle, and Western. The account maintenance positions, some that have been not fulfilled, or some are currently vacant. Those are the areas that the administrative service center is seeing a shortfall. So with that, it's just trying to supplement off of the general wage adjustment that happened last fiscal year, or this past fiscal year. Regarding solid waste department, this is an area that we've been talking to Navajo Nation EPA about, to create that partnership with Division of Community Development. And again, it's my understanding that from the 24th Resources and Development Committee, when the plan of operation was updated, the solid waste department was put back under Division of Community Development. And with that, the recommendation now from Division of Community Development was to start the department from ground bottom, meaning that they just wanted to hire a senior planner in hopes that the senior planner would start looking at developing policies and hopefully bringing the department up to the par, where there would be additional positions that eventually will be required going forward. So right now with the solid waste department, I do, if it is the wish of Budget and Finance Committee, to increase that, because again, this is a concern from Resources and Development Committee, because oftentimes we talk about groundwater and surface water. We do see a lot of illegal dumping staggered across the Navajo Nation, and we do have a department under Navajo Nation EPA right now that's trying to address all these issues. And with that, it's a groundwater issue when all these contaminants are based off of the runoff when it rains or snow melts, that a lot of these contaminants go back into groundwater. So if it's the wish of Budget and Finance Committee to have us look at increasing under the unmet needs section for solid waste department, I am favorable of that. Now with the rural addressing authority, I understand that they did get a high, amount of funding from ARPA. But the current problem or the current request right now for that 241,000 is to hire a department manager and office specialist to really start taking the department to the next level. Because right now, I believe we just have some GIS?
Yeah.
GIS positions in this particular department that really don't exercise the full execution of a department, where a manager would have to set policies and what the next steps are in terms of planning. So that 241,000 that you see under the unmet needs exhibit E of the resolution from RDC is to fund a department manager and an office specialist. So going on to Shadeja, Honorable Pradi's questions in regards to concern CHID reallocating almost $1 million and going from there to supplementing the 5 chapters short funding within the 4 agencies. So when Resources Development Committee had this discussion, it was a directive that Paul leads from Resources Development Committee gave to the division to look at alternative funding within the other departments of the division to supplement for funds being taken from their account maintenance specialist position and putting it into the shortfalls throughout the whole division. So it was calculated, and I did read the numbers into the record in regards to where some of these fundings would be put into, which is Eastern Agency in the amount of 471,000, Fort Defiance Agency of 165,000, Western Agency of 124,000, and Chinle Agency of 207,000, which equals to that $969,000 plus. So again, the logic behind this, if you look at the performance evaluation per Office of Management and Budget, the team with Resources and Development Committee looked at that, where the grading system was not really fulfilled by CHID. So again, they did mention that that there's some area of improvement, and that's to justify why the funding should be needed, and pretty much just directed to Division of Community Development to go back. So I believe this legislation was tabled, right? It was tabled the first time under committee rules, and the next day Division of Community Development did come back and taking the funds from the CHID program, and the committee members had pretty much, were in acceptance of taking that amount from the CHID program. So again, as the chair, I did, pretty much caution my members of Resources and Development Committee that we really need to be having a really good argument of why these funds are going to have to be taken from another department, or there was a recommendation that looking at maybe alternative option of the UUFB going forward. But again, it was approved to just recommended to take from what the Community Development came back to Resources Development Committee with, is to take that $1 million. So again, this would be an area that I would need to take back, it being a concern now from Budget and Finance Committee to Resources and Development Committee, and re-strategize that we would need to come up with alternative options to get the money back to CHID and look at alternative options of shortfall within Division of Community Development. And this is where the carryover might even be taken into consideration, because there is a carryover requested in the amount of, what was the amount, to 900? or this one. $1.2 million, and maybe this is where we can supplement the shortfall for the division right now overall. So, so I just want to make that response in regards to the CHID reallocation. Now, in regards to the RDC priorities, when we started off with Resources and Development Committee, one of the areas that we wanted to set as priority and really understand where these divisions are going and what is their plan of operation stating. So plan of operation update was the first major priority, along with the procurement amendments, which Budget and Finance Committee had already taken the initiative. And we've also had Department of Agriculture, where there's issues in regards to grazing permits and the ranches on Navajo Nation and the current concerns with the plan of operation for the farm board. And in regards to NXA, there is a concern there where Resources and Development Committee has been in consultation with Navajo Housing Authority. And the first thought was to appoint new board members that would carry out the productivity of NXA operation. And then Title 26 is one of the other areas that Resources and Development Committee had set as a long-term goal. And I know that it may or may not be attainable. So we're starting with the Title 26 amendments work session, and also the water rights issue. So, and again, the other part to DCD is to the concerns at the chapter level, because right now we do see a high volume of chapters that are not working together in terms of chapter officials and the administrative staff, and want to reunite the team at the local level to come back together to carry out chapters responsibilities. So, and again, with Navajo Housing Authority, that is another topic, because I believe that we understand now why the program or the enterprise is not really fulfilling and building out. And a lot of it comes back to grazing permit holders not willing to consent for land. A lot of our communities across the Navajo Nation don't want no subdivision because of the social issues it brings. And then the last bigger component is a lot of our constituents do not meet the qualification that is stringent under the HUD guidelines. So again, those are just some of the areas that I just wanted to put out. In regards to Honorable Asseret, Solid Waste Department, you've mentioned, I can go ahead and allow Mr. Castillo time to expound on this, as I know that he has brought this to RDC, and also is currently collaborating with Navajo Nation EPA and how they can start a stronger solid waste program here on Navajo Nation. And then again, there was questions in regards to the ARPA project positions under the solid waste program. So I'll go ahead and yield the floor over to Mr. Castillo, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Jesus and Madam Chair. Thank you for the response. Mr. Ashred, and I didn't see Honorable. With the solid waste, we are working with Mr. Ed City, We have a couple of meetings with EPA coming up, and also we're also looking at that DOE program that was presented here about 4 months ago. Had a 3-day work session on that and what kind of grants are available. But the thing is, they have to be in 24 months construction ready. So we will try to see if we can help the chapters get to those stages so we can apply for those grants. Business with EPA. Thank you again, Madam Chair. On the ARPA positions, Mr. Ed City said he could not find people for his vacancies. He just gave it back to Tom and Tom's trying to find his position for those also. A lot of programs are doing these things.
Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Garcia, can you also elaborate on the goal addressing?
Thank you, Chair, Parish. The rural addressing, the way I understand it is, DPS has a $30 million contract. They're gonna do E911 and rural addressing at the same time. They have a contractor that's on board now to establish that. And the way they're trying to tackle this is what I'm hearing, is they selected 8 areas, high populated, they call it pods. And then they're going to do their addressings and an E911 for those 8 pods that they're working on. So
What's the justification for the division of community development to ask for the general funds for this project?
we're getting about 150 applicants a day to get their what do you call this? The location, physical address location clarification or. I know they're the thing they sign every day, and when they're always at our office filling those out. So we need a staff to get those in.
Request for general funds for staff.
Yes,
Is that what the request
yes,
is
more
for?
staff, yeah.
How many more staff?
2 more staff, we need a program manager and an office assistant.
Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Castillo. I'm going to come back to the committee or let's see. When I ask, the name hasn't gone yet, but we're beginning.
Good morning, again to, Madam Chair, Jesus, and to, members of the Budget and Finance Committee. Morning to everyone that's in the room here too as well. You're from under DCD or under any of the oversight under RDC. Thank you very much for being before us this morning. My first question is back to the overall budget. I see that you're going to you're taking the costs from kids to fund another cost, and I see that all the time in the budgetary process, but my question is back to you, Madam Chair. Could you ask Arvin Mitchell or the president why he cut the vision of community development's overall budget? That's my question. I mean, if the president's budget is to identify the huge aspect of the problem that we have, and that's just to spend down funding in ARPA and CSN. Why did he cut the budget? Why did he tell Arvin to cut the budget from the Division of Community Development? In this year in 2023, there was an allocation of $118 million from general fund that went to the executive branch. That was 6.63% of that went to make up this year's budget, Mr. Castillo's budget. And that 6.3% is $7.8 million. Now, in this year's 3-branch chiefs agreement that you see right here, that was signed by the president, there's $120 million. Out of that $120 million, the president had an increase in funds. And in there was a document that was given back out to the committee members, and there was $2.8 million of excess. But that was on top of the regular allocated of funds that was given to the president. So the president already got his $118 million, same as last year. But if you look on this O&B report right here, last year, the president gave DCD $7.8 million. That was President Jonathan Ness. This year, President Boone Nygren only gave then 7.4 million. That's 400, almost $500,000 less. Why? Why did you cut the budget? Why did the president cut your budget, Mr. Castillo? Maybe you have that answer. Why did he cut your percentage budget? If you were going off the same allocation as last year, you got 6.63% last year in last year's budget. That's how much money made up that 7.8 million. If you got that same amount this year, your budget right now, instead of it saying 7.4 million, your budget would be $7,982,400.79. So the president cut your department $555,797,79.79. Where did that money go? To what other department? What other branch? Why did he cut your budget? Did he give you an explanation, Madam Chair, or it's good student? Castillo? I just want to know that one, because that would give us some insight to saying, okay, where are we going and what are we doing and trying to help assist the program, because the overall goal is really trying to say, one, you have a problem in projects working with you. Two, you need more staff. You're saying that right now that you should have a $4 million budget more. Why? And then why did RDC take your recommendation, Madam Chair? You know the ropes. I look up to you. I highly look up to you. Where in here on the president's pool of budget for $2.8 million, where is it on here that he gave any extra money to you for staff? Nowhere. So we're asking ourselves, okay, what's our priority? And that's why I'm looking for that document that I asked this week from Office of Management and Budget to say how much money was allocated last year and how much money was allocated this year. What's the president's priorities? And if this year, if the president's only giving you 6.1% of their overall budget, and last year there was 6.63%, it's a decrease. So where did they put that money? Where did they give the extra funds to? Annually? Somewhere. I don't know. I can't answer that question because I don't have those two columns in front of me to say where did those funds go? Did those go to Stephen at City? Did those go to the Department of Education? Did those go to his office? The president can give himself $560,000, and I'm sure he needs it. But is that where he put that extra $555,000 this year? Where is those funds? Why did he cut your budget? If we're going to be accountable, we have a problem. You know we have a problem. I said it so many times to you, Mr. Castillo. Why are we cutting this budget? Why are we cutting your budget? If we need more staff and personnel, if we need more contracts to get higher external individuals on board to help you out, to draw down on all those reversions that are possible on the Mexico capital outlay. Not even get into ARPA, all those projects that I've been waiting for and power line projects since 2016. I had 3 elders die. And they're waiting. And why is the president cutting your budgets? Maybe you have the answer. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Mr. David. Is it works for you, Mr. Collins? Is it report here?
On the, as far as the budget cut, I was not involved in any of that. Mr. Mitchell is here. He said he would like to cover that if they'll allow him some time. Yeah.
Shaha Ado Shitsula, Speaker David for posing that valid question. Mr. Arbor Trujillo did come to, Resources and Development Committee meeting last week during, community development, budget overview. And it was just, brought to us, that the general wage adjustment from FY 2022 has impacted, 110 chapters times 2 employees at 222 chapters. And that, the general wage adjustment is in total of $5 million. And that the 550,000 is just an acreage where now the FY 2024 budget has to pick up what is going to be the negative this fiscal year for the general wage adjustment and also the French benefit. So it was pretty much not really questioned in regards to why there was a shortfall to Division of Community Development, but more in a sense where now we had to get instrumental to have Division of Community Development find alternative means. And then also the recommendation at the time that was given was to look at the additional possibly requesting UUFB. And it also was mentioned to us that there's a lot of other areas in regards to departments under the Navajo Nation that has also taken cuts. So, and after reviewing this and knowing now that there was an additional $2.8 million, which I just learned this past week. I didn't know that last week, but I learned it this past Monday. And now, we're sitting here and why Division of Community Development wasn't given the full money last year was not fully answered to us from the president's office.
The committee like to hear from Mr. Mitchell. The question posed about the budget cut from this Division of Community Development. Mr. Mitchell? Welcome.
Morning, that's it. For the record, Alderman Mitchell, President, Vice President. Those who don't know, the question that's being posed. I think we covered this yesterday at Nobby. Almost for an hour. The 2.8, and then also
Mr.
some of-
Mitchell,
some
for
of
the
the issue-
record, the question is about the budget cut, not about the additional 2.8. So please answer the question.
the question is, how do we arrive at the numbers for each division? So Mr. Damon's question is 120 million. Based on the 3-branch agreement. I covered that yesterday. So that 20 million went down to 117 million. Because raising official was moved from the executive to fixed costs. So that's 117 million. So when we did the allocation, there was 2.2 million from last year to this fiscal year, additional revenue. So when the 3 branches, when they met, 3-branch chief, how to split up the pie. So during that time, which I didn't mention yesterday, from the executive office, we gave over 500,000 to legislative branch. Also 500,000 to judicial branch. The million that we gave to the other 2 branches when they were splitting up the pie. So this 2.2 would have been more if we didn't did that. So the 2.2 was an additional from FY 23 to 24 additional revenue. So in yesterday's discussion, that's what I stated. I said, okay, each branch we're given these amounts. Though based on that is how
each of the branch chief did their allocations. In our case, it happens every year. We do this every year. Sometimes it's 10% that we minus that out from divisions, it creates an allocated, and then we go through what the committee is doing. Go through a little budget hearing. Although they address their some of their issues and all that. So 0.5 is what was taken from DCD. It's a so it wasn't. I don't have my notes with me. I don't know what the number is. So each division was 0.5, not 1%, but 0.5. So that created the 2.8, from that 2.2 to 2.8. So that was reallocated. So in this case, community development got some monies for the rural addressing. Because we need general funds position to carry out a lot of these rural addressing that under opera. They just put up a sign, but further on, we need these. The other one is to restart the solid waste, which we gave like 100,000 to restart and all that. So it on the seat. So it's now coming to the chapter in your 3-branch agreement. In your 3-branch agreement, also yesterday, I stated that. Up here, you'll see the chapter non-app, and again, this is for PEP and all that. Although there's other funds that chapter get. One of them is for personnel, which had a shortfall. In there, it was 11 point something as their base. 11.4 or whatever it was, 11.4 around that figure. So I was telling them, I said, we need to increase this next year because it's already short funded. Because the GWA has finally caught up with that line item. The chapter 200 plus staff, the GWA finally caught up. Although in each division, if you have a lot of employees, catch up with you because we had GWA in FY22, which was funded last year. FY23, it's probably close to 5.6 million. So just a rough estimation that controller did was that the chapter, 500,000 be bigger, and the GWA for FY22. So what I told them is that next year we have to make sure that we start from there. At the chapter personnel, the 2 personnel, make sure that it's fully funded. I think the fully funded is the number is 12.4 and 12.4. Although the chip last year, which was also covered by Mr. Damon, the additional money that was given to community development. Although that money was for ARPA, the assistant ARPA. Although there was personnel, although it was still vacant and all that, so we did agree to move that 900 and that number, the 900 something that was given to the chapter. So because it was vacant and all that, was to help with the ARPA. And we do need to spend on the ARPA money. We need to spend on the ARPA money. So that was one of the discussions that we had is like the external fund subject that we covered yesterday. Not only ARPA, but the other fundings that we get from other funding sources. So if it's how we arrive at fully funding the chapter position because of the GWA and it stayed at that level for a couple of years without any increase, so finally caught up. So next year, hopefully, they'll be fully funded the chapter. I know that there's a lot of vacancies at the chapter. A lot of vacancies at the chapter, and it's hard to hire at the chapter, you know.
Mr. Mendel, can you elaborate on the overall planning allocation for the executive branch and the cuts that were referred to by speakers?
I have to run back at my notes. Like I said, point five.
Why they hired you?
Huh?
Why they hired you and got you back?
Yeah. I did that last year, too.
And you can take our hits. And take it. Can you fix the problem?
Yeah, this how we fix it, and next year, this how we're gonna fix the chapter personnel.
Mr. Mitchell, there's an increase in this year's revenue. So the question was, why is there a decrease in the Division of Community Development's budget?
Like I said, we took 0.5 although that created the 2.8. Although that square sheet that you that is floating around 2.8, where that money went.
So I'm not going to time after what you're speaking.
You just admitted, that they need more help. Does that? So, in your pool of 0.5%, you didn't give them any more help. So what is the plan? What are you gonna do? What's the plan to give them more help? If you're not gonna give them any more funding in the budget, what is the plan to give Elmo Castillo and the rest of the Division of Community Development more assistance? He's saying you need more personnel. We're up against the wall right now to get these projects out. So what is it? What is the president's plan? That's what I'm at. I guess that's my bottom line. What is the president's plan? And get them more technical assistance if it's not in the general fund budget.
Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you again for the question. The plan from the start, when we got these allocations, is that we need to spend down on the ARPA monies. Because there will be, timeline is short on those ARPA monies. So the plan to use a lot of those for, I think the 10% are still out there, the administrative. When the payroll issues that report, there's a lot of those administrative funds that you can use for personnel that is still out there.
Committee members, do you have any other questions? Vice Chair Slater?
Well, I guess to the administration, my colleagues, my preference is that you do spend $500. If you look at the budget and look at the expenditure rate, there's no justification to see an increase in dollar amounts there. So I have a different logic than what's being there, is going down in terms of allocating additional resources. But I don't think that those need to derive from general fund sources at this time, because we have ARPA dollars from the administrative cost, and we have money set aside for consultants that should provide those resources. And I think that if there needs to be general funded positions for wiping out this backlog, then I need to see like a really strong justification for doing that, because the 7.8 million from last year included 1.9 is a supplementary allocation to DCT into the CHIP program, which in theory is a one-time infusion. So we're looking at an above average base for DCT, if I remember correctly. And because they're only at a 41 or 42% expenditure rate, that means there's $1 million, 1.1. And that's money that I think should have the opportunity to go towards something in this goal. Now, that could be project managers to clear the backlog of all these projects. do the analysis, then we see it's talking about, but we have the resources to do that analysis right now. I'm not wrong. But the thing that I'd like to see it go towards is solid waste, and emergency response, emergency relief potentially. And, you know, I just personally can't support adding a lot more money into the budget when there is another source that could cover those things. The same thing goes for solid waste. If you look at using a modest amount and reallocating some of our dollars to do that. So I hope that, you know, the chair's leadership and the president being amenable to that, that we can make some reallocation for the soon. With the excess, hardship assistance or some of the NDOH monies, potentially calling back the DED dollars that $16 million or something. And, you know, those are things that we can put to work instead of using our general fund dollars. Or we just authorize a new pool and say, we issued a directive on Friday. I think Speaker Dan, we're here for this. And that was each of the programs that come before us, we need them that are part of the comprehensive budget. We need them to identify what are the potentially eligible fiscal relief funds and reimbursable activities. And those need to be cataloged over the course of this. And at the end of the day, you know, that's probably how we're going to have to spend most of these dollars. It's a combination of that. And well, so thank you.
So, appreciate the discussion. I want to go back to the OMB report. There was a condition of appropriation. So you had a condition of appropriation. The DPP administration shall research and determine the feasibility and shall develop facility plans for all 11 or 110 chapters to purchase and install new state-of-the-art computer equipment and software that will allow members of the public to easily access an application forms and applications for purposes of applying to COVID-related financial and other assistance. Regarding these tasks, the BFC director shall present a verbal and written report to the Resource Development Committee and the Budget and Finance Committee by the end of first quarter of fiscal year 2023. So that says that there's no response, but I understand, Mr. Castillo, this would be under former director Dr. Yellowman, but you're still in this budget responsible. In third quarter, there was no response, so you're non-compliant. It doesn't look like in this condition of appropriation, and that's sometimes what we miss is, so if there's this, there's no recourse. So what I want to do is see if this is still something that your department is working on. I actually, because now I'm looking at the other conditions of appropriation. I do want to start with the legislative concern, and hopefully I can like this with our legislative concerns. So the Division of Community Development Department in cooperation with the Community Housing with CHID programs. By the end of second quarter fiscal year 2024, complete all appropriate and necessary actions to address and resolve the following. What I want to put in here is trying to think of the word, because what I'm trying to merge is if there's going to be a housing initiative on that information, we're not seeing that reflected on the priorities. And so I want to make that a priority. So to resolve, let's say to map out housing assessment or cost management. Or I'm sorry, Lorraine, I'm trying to help me with the words. I'm just thinking the first step for them to develop assessing the housing from that information. And that's them pulling in now housing authority, pulling in land department. And seeing what's out there, and we should have an idea, so that could be a draft or an update by second quarter. Is that something we could think is feasible with Mr. Delguy and yourself on the work that you've been doing at CHIP?
Yeah.
Thank you again, Madam Chair, and thank you for the question, Honorable Prati. I believe we can. Yeah,
So legislative concern is not a condition of appropriation. What it is letting you know from the legislative branch as a delegate. And collectively, this is something that should be prioritized and be reported back. And so if you could make that written or verbal report to Resource and Development Committee and the Budget and Finance by the end of the fiscal quarter. So that would be by March 30th of 2024. I think you would have an idea where we're at when it comes to housing investment. And if you don't have the capacity at that time, that's where you can report back to the committee. So that's where we start building up what support you need and start identifying the areas how we can support the different initiatives. Okay, and the other legislative concern I want to raise is what we talked about in the last meeting. So for the division of community development, in cooperation with the capital project management department, will be responsible by the end of the first quarter to take all appropriate and necessary actions to address and resolve the following. Developing the 5-year ITI plan for navigation. So draft forms and should be giving that report to Resource and Development Budget and Finance by the end of this fiscal 1 quarter. I don't know if I need to break it down, but we did agree that it would be the year to develop. And so I just wanted to make sure that we have that on the record as a legislative. I do want to create a legislative concern that Speaker Damon mentioned, but do you have a legislative concern for the contractual services that are needed? No. Okay, so comprehensive.
Yeah, right, it's gonna be in comprehensive, but.
So what we do is we make a listing, and so our attorney, Mr. Pahi, has given us a template. And so when we're done with the report, because we don't modify your resolution, it's here. We're just making recommendations when we enter into discussions with the comprehensive budget. And so you'll see an exhibit with legislative concern. And as chair, we're not able, or maybe you didn't have the opportunity to create any. That's also an opportunity for you as chair if you want to develop some legislative concern. And if you need the template, our attorney, I'm sure Mariana or Mr. Pahi can give you a copy and you can start developing those. And what it does is just track what are the concerns of the committee and then the responsibility of the programs to present that information. We usually do legislative concerns, and then if they're not complied, then I'll move forward with the commission for appropriation. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Travis. Members, do we have further stuff on our report today?
Yes. I have a response, and maybe I should have clarified that in my statement, is that I understand what the vice chair is saying, and I understand your position. And I guess to state my position, the reason why I'm asking for more funding and I'm concerned about why there's no more general funds into the Division of Community Development is one that all the funding right now that you're talking about that's under our is only for is under Calvin Castillo shop, that $10 million, that's only for ARPA projects. What I'm concerned about, Vice Chair, Madam Chair, the Budget and Finance Committee, Castillo and ARPA, is about the 32 projects that are not on the radar right now that are going to be reverted by the state of New Mexico, because those are not on. Those aren't eligible for, they are, I don't know if they're eligible or not, but they're not in those IDIQ contracts. And that's, let's give you an example. Navajo Code Talkers Museum, we're gonna lose $1 million. If we don't get that. The Yumbatoa Chapter House can lose 519,000. Navajo Nation Renewable Energy Project can lose $2 million. Cuddy Eye Government Center is gonna lose 600,000. Navajo Nation Veterans and the Veteran Center in Chicago can lose 200,000. White Rock Chapter is gonna lose 325,000 for the Veterans Building. Baca Pruitt's gonna lose the purchase of $125,000 for the backhoe. Mexican Springs is gonna lose 382,000 for the power line. Safeco Chapter is gonna lose 360,000 for power line. $905,000 plus another $1 million, 100,000 at Lake Valley for power line. $1 million power line budget is gonna be gone. Red Valley's at least 350,000 for power line budget. Said economy is gonna lose 425,000 for power line budget. Those projects are backed up at DCD that don't have additional staff that are not included in the IDIQ contract. So when we're cutting the budget from the staff there, and we're not putting those projects in place of project managers, that's what I'm worried about right there, and that's my concern. There's 32 projects right now that are potentially going to be reverted if we don't have those dollars expended by next year. They might give us another 6 months until December of 2024. The state of New Mexico. There's 15 capital outlay projects on 2022 and 2020 that were funded by the state. Those 15 projects that were funded by the state of New Mexico that were given to us in 2020 have to at least have their 5% done and ready to go. If we don't have it, the Mexico Indian Affairs Department, just when the state legislature or DFA, the Division of Finance in the state of New Mexico, calls up the Mexico Indian Affairs Department, then they say, are these projects, what's the status of these? These have been funded more than 4 years ago. Then Orange John and his whole team calls Mr. Castillo. Mr. Castillo, it gives them the same response. The Mexico Indian Affairs, what they do is they say, we got it, we're working with it. That's all they say. Because they don't know that the response and action plan that we need to do continues to draw down, because Mr. Castillo doesn't have the technical assistance and the team within his department to execute these contracts in a timely manner. We need more help. There's another 10 projects that now we need to get from tribal infrastructure in the state of New Mexico. Those projects are going to be reverted in June of 2020. It's very hard to get tribal infrastructure projects extended. That's why I'm concerned. There's 26 aging projects in New Mexico aging. We haven't even gotten those. All our aging department, the state of New Mexico gives funding to the Navajo Nation, 26 projects totaling $26 million. They're going to be reverted in 2025. That's less than 3 years. Those projects are going to help our elders, but those projects are not on the IDIQ contract or under the ARPA funding. That's why I'm worried that this isn't even to include all our internal CSN projects, our internal UUFP projects. Those aren't on the IDIQ contracts on any contracts. So that's why I asked Mr. Mitchell. That's why I asked, what is the plan? If you're not funding them, what is your plan? What is your plan outside of the general fund budget? How are you going to get these individuals through? How are we going to get more technical assistance so that the chapter get the projects completed? And I don't know about Arizona. I can't ask that question. I don't know about those individual state projects for Arizona. Those individual state project planning that you all got from Arizona, from the state or even from you, those projects are not on the IDIQ contract. Those projects are just getting stacked up and stacked up. So poor Irma Julian, the poor Linda Hardy, who has 40 projects right now. 40 projects for one project manager. It can't be done. It cannot be done. That's what I'm worried. And I hope I help justify the reason why I'm asking why the president cut your budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker Damon. I'm gonna turn the time over to, Chair Hoops.
Yeah, Speaker Damon and also Chair Parrish and members of Budget and Finance Committee. I just want to put out, you know, the information that was just shared here by Honorable Speaker Damon in regards to all these outstanding capital outlay projects with the state of New Mexico. And also, I know it's very minimal in the state of Arizona. And this question, again, has been posed to Division of Community Development. How can we get a faster turnaround time to get these projects out the door? I know that 5% expenditure requirement by the state of New Mexico for capital outlay projects and even TIF. And again, it comes back down to staffing and trying to find individuals that have that project management background. And again, it's disheartening to know right now that the office of the president and nowhere at this time with what was appropriated to Division of Community Development was there any consultation from OPVP to Division Director Calvin Castillo here. So again, so when I look into President's priorities that was sent out via email, it's very disheartening that right now there appears to be some a segregation going. So as Resources and Development Committee, we did, you know, come to plan a meeting with Office of the President, but I wanted all members of RDC to be there at one time in the stateroom with OPVP, but right now they have priorities, so I can't get the group together at one time. This is a big issue to me because as I had come from the chapter level, chapters diligently work in preparing proposals, going up to the state level and advocating for the need of within their communities. And right now, I know that Mr. Castillo being new, and oftentimes I know that I don't want to pressure the division director with everything that he already has on his plate from the political side. But my question has always been to Mr. Castillo, what is your plan? So now with just the information that's being shared here, RDC really does need to go back to the drawing board with Division of Community Development in regards to these projects that was mentioned. I know that this IDIQ contract just primarily focuses on the ARPA projects that the chapters had submitted. But even that, Mr. Castillo is informed that they need to come up with a plan B and C should a lot of these chapter projects not meet the encumbrance date nor the project built out date by 2026. So again, a lot of it has to deal with individuals being brought in to even create new positions. And I know that right now with just the minimal staff, it's a lot of workload and 40 projects is a lot. So right now, one of our to do would be that and I totally agree and with Budget and Finance Committee's legislative concern. And again, being first time in this political capacity, I really wasn't too sure in terms of, do I go to OPVP and ask them that we need more funds for, you know, all these essential divisions of the Navajo Nation under executive branch. But in terms of being told that I need to be careful and not crossing over this fine line that's where I felt, I'm the one as RDC that had failed to really fully execute and ask a lot of these questions, because in the back of my mind, I know these are some of the concerns, and I'm glad that Budget and Finance Committee members are bringing this up. And now that we have staff with Division of Community Development to understand and even hear for themselves a lot of these concerns. So it's just not me that's asking these questions. So how do we come together and try to come up with a quantifiable budget? Not only that, but allow more budget to contractual services in hopes that we get more outside project management consultants to come on board to assist the division. Because right now, it is, when we looked at this list, it said, how are you going to carry out all these projects? And IDIQ, and this is where it's been, just a tug of war. And I've been adding Chair Parrish to on my email thread with Office of the Controller, Contract Administration, what's the other office? OMB, where is the contract number? Right now, I just learned as of this morning that the IDIQ consultants, the 4, haven't gotten the full contract. They haven't gotten the notice to proceed nor the scope of work. So it's still held back. And yet, and Chair Parrish knows, we met with Mr. Castillo, we met with ARPA and OOC. Where is the holdup? We need to get these projects built out. So now we're cutting it very close on the 11th hour. And so right now as RDC, as chair, I will take the position to where I need to get a little bit more involved and just trying to work with the division from the committee level with members of RDC and see where we can change, and do we even put more money? And that's what I would recommend, is putting more money into contractual services to hopefully get consultants to get these project built out, not just for ARPA, but for the New Mexico Outlay project and also TIF projects. So I just want to put that out there. This has been a concern, and I'm really glad that members of Budget and Finance Committee are bringing these concerns up, because oftentimes I'm out, how would you say it, outvoted. And yet now I'm really glad that this is coming up and we can bring this up at a full council as a discussion. So again, I do not have no problem with the legislative concern, but going forward, these are trial and errors, and going forward that these betterments will hopefully be made as my leadership role as Chair of Resources and Development Committee. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chair Castillo. I don't know if Mr. Castillo has any further comments about the workload of the project managers or any considerations that would be necessary. Mr. Castillo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Damon, for the excellent question. Mr. Platero has been working with me. We're going to drop legislation to go after UFB. The way the IDIQ contract is written, that we can use other funding source to do those projects, not only FRF projects. We can identify other funding source in that same contract to do the project. So we're putting a budget together. We're putting the projects together. We're putting cost estimates. If it's just design, it won't be that much, but if it's a design build, they're going through the whole process. It's 18 months, and how much that cost is going to cost. So right now, with just the estimates that we're doing, it's going to be like 40 to 50 million additional funds just to get those IDIQ contracts working on those other projects. The UUFB, the Permanent Trust Funds, CSN, and all the other programs are starting to dump their project on us that have ARPA money. They say, no, we can't do it. Can you help us with this IDIQ contract? It says, as long as you have a contractual service PU number for that, we can use that and assign. Because the firms we have hundreds and hundreds of engineers on board that they can assign those.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo. Committee members, do you have further questions for the presentation?
My question is, Steve, the thing again, that there seems to be a response to Steve. But I guess my concern right now is that back in April of this year, that you Mr. Castillo, and he said that we needed about $4.5 million to get a new IDIQ contract just for 911 nations, mixed state projects and CSM projects. I still haven't got that information. Why is that not on your unmet need or where is your unmet need right here is only for 2 programs. Where's the unmet need for more personnel for your office? I can't fight for you. I can't fight for you to get more personnel. I can't fight to get more dollars for you. If you don't have that even as an unmet need. To me, this document makes it look like everything's good. Dwayne Lassetta has all his money ready to go. This document says that you only need $291,000 for rural addressing and solid waste. Where does it say we need more technical staff? Where does it say we need money for to get an IDIQ contract for the state funds? I just don't understand why that's not here. That's why I asked, what is the plan? But now you're coming out after we asked you and then we asked Arvin, what's the plan? Now you're saying that you're now working with Tom Patera on the document. That's something. So when is that? Is that going to be something that you're looking at to get completed by October? To get to the council, when is the internal deadline for that? Because we're trying to help you, but I can't help you if you don't ask us to help you. And if that's just the administration telling you not to seek for assistance, or if that's internally, we just need to know what we need to do, because in order for us to work together on both sides, on this side and your side, we legislate the funds for you to execute that. And I just want to know what is your true unmet need in order to make sure that you have a functioning office. So individuals aren't always being bogged down in your office. So your stress level can go down. Because if we don't get that information, we can't fight for you to get any more funding. We don't know what your daily job is. We don't know that information. This is the first time that we can have you come before the budget finance committee. You go before RDC pretty much at any time as their oversight. That's the reason why these questions are coming into fruition. And that's why I'm just asking, what is your plan in place if you're not going to fund it within the general fund budget? What is your plan in place to help assist making sure that you have the best technical team in the office so that you can execute all these contracts? Thank you.
Committee members, we have further questions. Vice Chancellor.
Thank you. I just want to encourage the program to not go after supplemental funding requests and just do a limited scope and calculate exactly what you need. Is it 27 projects that must be reserved? Converted?
All together is 46
projects. You just calculate the project management or the whatever it is that you need to get done, and just make that your limited request to ARPA. And I'm happy to support that. I would also ask that you do that for the Arizona appropriations that came out recently, and then the other ones need to be calculated within a 5-year plan. And all these other outstanding things, but that's going to take a lot of time. It's a lot of them on the partial plan, but you can use ARPA dollars for that, and you have your contracts in place. You just need to put a business to plug it in. And I just want to see us. I think we've all made a commitment when we see those dollars spent, and it's kind of the perfect parallel to projects where, if we hire a bunch of people and we get it through the next few years, we have to continue to make that allocation each year within BCD. And at the end of 3 years, we're not going to have our numbers. Not going to be any numbers unless there's a massive recession and the federal government decides they want to print a bunch of money and send it out again. There's a budget projection for next year, we're gonna be at 157, not 161, so it's $4 million less. I don't think we should be setting higher baselines within the general funds budget. In divisions of programs that are having difficulty spending right now. But delegate Speaker Damon's concerns need to be addressed because we're just leaving money on the table. I just see the last 4 years in the ECD, to be quite frank, and the CTMD as well as nothing happened for any of the projects in that district. And that was from the top, very, very top. And I don't know when all these Mexico allocations happen, but you know, the last administration did not get anything for that in my district in terms of the projects. So I really hope that there's a clear direction given this.
Any other committee members with further questions or comments at this time? Before we go back to the presenters, Ms. Tucker, can we have an update on the requested document from the Office of Legislative Services? You have an update on where the document is for the distributed on Monday. How long will the document requested by the committee take? Let's see the triggers, the directive that the committee will use for the Office of Legislative I think even that way, we set a time back over to,
Okay, Madam Chair, Parrish, one area that I just wanted to expound on as well as Division of Community Development noticed the high volume of capital outlay projects that have been coming to the Navajo Nation. And with a lot of these projects, they're not thoroughly planned out in terms of land acquisition, the preliminary planning, the design stage of construction. So with that, Division of Community Development is currently in the process of developing what they call a vetting process for the New Mexico chapters. Because right now, one of the concerns from the state of New Mexico is that they want the Navajo Nation to match these projects. And the Navajo Nation, I don't know how, if the Navajo Nation has the financial capacity to match the dollar amount that is awarded by the New Mexico Capital Outlay Project. So it's on a reimbursement process. So technically the Navajo Nation has to spend money and submit a reimbursement to the Office of Indian Affairs and finally get a payment back. But it has to be within the parameters of the scope of work that was agreed upon through the IGA. So with that, I know in hopes that going forward for the New Mexico chapters that are going to be requesting projects through New Mexico Capital Outlay during the legislative session, this would, in hopes, help in a way to which level of project stage the chapters would be seeking funding and really minimize the overflow of a lot of these New Mexico outlay projects that are coming from the state of New Mexico. I mean, it is a good thing, but again, there's certain steps that are being missed, and that's where a lot of the agreement conditions are changed when an IGA is executed between the Navajo Nation and the state of New Mexico. Change orders have to happen within these agreements. So I believe that's where a lot of the issues are right now. And from there, the 5% would start being expended and trying to meet that full 100% expenditure. So I just wanted to add that as well. And again, in terms of legislative concern, this is an area that we would have to talk to Mr. Castillo as their plans in regards to the additional $4 or $5 million that he has mentioned that he's working with Mr. Tom Platero with. Is it Mr. Tom Platero? Mr. Tom Quatero with from ARPA, FRF office and see how this can be done, or maybe this is an unmet need that can be added to the division's unmet needs exhibit. So I just wanted to add that. I don't know if Mr. Castillo, if you want to add anything.
Thank you, Chair. Hey, Susan, thank you for the question. We are seeking outside funds because we are putting all the projects together. It's over 900 projects that we're going to be working with. So that's why we're asking for that UUFP to help the firms that we've got in contract now to help us catch up. And then once the ARPA money is gone, at least we'll caught up with all the projects.
No, I don't, Madam Chair.
Original budget, any other questions on the presentation? Do we have any proposals for legislative concerns or appropriations?
It's embarrassing.
You're the guy.
So, I think we have any? Okay, do you have any questions? Judges, delegate, members, and everybody, do you have any questions?
I do. So, what I just want to. No, I didn't finish. So here's the budget impact statement from. We have to get the budget impact statement from the division.
No, we didn't have.
I just got it. So we could get a copy from staff. Because it does state the additional staff that's needed. Totaling 4.9 million. So I just want to know, Speaker Damon, how did you want for this resolution that did you want to make that recommendation on the record to change the key? Because we're, Mr. Pine just said how. Budget changes. So it says here the template is to revise exhibits. I didn't think we could revise exhibits because it's the oversight. So, but I would like to include the unmet need, but Delegate even mentioned, and maybe this could be. Because if we're waiting for Mr. Quintero and it's a UFB, that's another 6 months. We could just get it done in this budget. We could start moving money around to prioritize it. And what I'm hearing from Chair Casey, that's something she wants to have a conversation about. So I think that would be a high priority for those projects that are at the work. And then
Thank you, Mr. Potty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify, when I sent out, these forms are actually called amendments, and I didn't like that word, I go for the term revise. But actually, then I ended up to the term changes. So yes, Delegate Crotty is correct that no amendments to any of these final oversight committee legislation, these resolutions are being done because the oversight committees, including RDC, have final authorities for these program division budget legislation. So they're done, they're all undid. But what I mean by revise or change, as opposed to a capital A amendment, is simply budget and finance committee. Right now, this is the process of negotiation. That word negotiations is used in Title 12. Right now, we're engaged in that process of talking through what the committee desires and what the committee's budget and finance committee's concerns are, as compared to the final exhibits that are in the oversight committee resolutions. So budget and finance committee has the authority to revise, change, edit the exhibits in preparation for putting together the comprehensive budget legislation. So that's why 3 of these templates were emailed out One of them is for conditions of appropriation, if any of the committee members wishes to add that. And also legislative council urges the committee to consult, because consultation is required under Title 12. When a condition of appropriation is going to be added for a program. And then there's also a template for legislative concerns. If any of the budget finance committee members wish to add a legislative concern for this particular, for DCD, for this particular program. And then the other one is the sort of, it's a little chart there with the lines, change the budget allocation. And so that those are templates for the committee to use to write in everything, so that myself and Ms. Nakai and Ms. Nelson and OMB as well, so that all of us who are in charge of putting together everything for the comprehensive budget legislation, so that we can all keep proper track of everything that the committee wants, rather than sort of a verbal discussion of things and everyone is scrambling right now. So that's the reason that we sent out these templates, so that we can keep really good track of all the changes. I shouldn't say revisions or amendments, but changes that the committee desired to these legislations. And then we compile these into the final comprehensive legislation, budget legislation with the changes. If any.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Shudder delegate Amber Carter offered a motion, so at this time to make the revisions as he stated, would that require a motion, or that is a note on?
As I had mentioned earlier, Honorable Parrish, rather than making a motion for every single change, whether it's to a budget line item, whether it's a condition of appropriation or legislative concern, that would take quite a lot of time to do that for every single budget legislation that's on the agenda. What I think we simply will do, what I will do, is collect all of these templates that were sent out once they're filled out. And also I can listen and keep track of my own notes. I will compile them, and as I said in the email that I sent out, I will be in charge of questions of appropriations and the legislative concerns, compiling them into a final big list that will go into the budget legislation. And then there would be line item changes to the budget documents, to the figures, that should go to OMB, because OMB will be preparing those budget forms. So then, once we have all of that done, then I would propose to present a draft or a final draft. It's a draft, but it's called the final draft for the committee's review. And the committee can then say, yes, this is what we wanted for DCD, this is what we wanted for DED, whatever, and then check everything, make sure everything's good, and then we drop the legislation.
Yeah.
If we have to, there's no requirement to motion and to do all of these things piecemeal with every single legislation. It's just a matter of keeping track of everything. We'll compile it the best way that I know, based on my notes, based on discussions, based on your forms emails to me. And then we'll have that final form. And then the committee members will review it, and then we drop it out. And of course, it doesn't mean that's the actual final version. It goes through and there maybe for the amendments. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Shudder delegate Amber Carter. I guess into the committees, would you like to proceed and having Mr. Coffey just with what the amendment and we'll review them as a committee.
But what I wanted to add was, remember we talked about exhibit need, and so unmet needs, if you could help us, because I would want to add that to our unmet need portion, and we would need the budget from community development. And so if delegate right here on this summary that we received, Polly, it says 4.9 million, 4,950,590. So that includes additional staffing. I'm not sure if this is the one you're referring to, Delegate, but if we would need then the budget for that, so that we could, as we start allocating and moving dollars, to make sure this is the priority of the committee, and then put it out on our colleagues, letting them know to having, or these navigation project. And, Chair Jesus, Speaker Damon, myself, Delegate McGay and others were on the New Mexico kind of a caucus. And so we've been meeting with New Mexico legislatures. We met with them last week in Gallup. And so we are having these high level conversations about the impact of the New Mexico capital outlay dollars as they're not fully funded. And so that puts a liability on the navigation. And although there's a great benefit to receiving these big dollars, it's by invoice, so navigation pays up front and then invoice the dollars. So just let us know, working with Delegate Damon, myself, and others on your committee, New Mexico delegates, our Delegate Natty Simpson and Delegate Martinez. That's it on the New Mexico side, but you do have representation on your committee. So for the speaker's office, there's lots of good who helps this collaboration. And so I think it's just how do we connect you with that information so that you're also aware of these high level discussions are happening when it comes to these state fundings, because we're looking at what Arizona provides, and Arizona just gives us the money. And then for Utah, I'm not exactly sure how that funnels it either, but for us, it's the budget to the nation, having that fiscal responsibility and then the pressure from New Mexico.
Thank you. Mr. Potter, did you have to that?
I have a, yes, I need a clarification. Thank you, Madam Chair. It is a bit unfortunate that we don't have a template for the unmet needs. And I suppose I could draft one up real quick, but what is confusing me is I'm taking a look at the final oversight committee resolution approved by RAC. And I'm looking at a snippet. Let's see. The unmet needs. Okay, so mean shows unmet needs of 2,595,133. If I'm not mistaken, I'm looking at the bib posted final resolution.
Yeah.
Then I'm looking at this corrected version provided in the binder here today. And I'm looking at exhibit E for that. And that only has $291,400. Then now I'm looking at this handout that was just sent out, which has BCD budget impact statement, the last page, which Honorable Delegate Crocker was reading, second to last page, which he was reading from, and it shows 4. So I think the best thing we need is if the unmet needs, the list of unmet needs and the total dollar amount of unmet needs going to deviate in any way from the final approved RDC resolution. I think the program should prepare a revised, changed, edited version of their unmet needs exhibit and provide that to the committee. So we'll use that for the big unmet needs exhibit that we're going to put together for everyone. Right? Does that make sense?
No.
Can I ask a question then?
Yes.
So, I mean, unmet needs. You can either have a schedule at the end of the budget, or you could just fund it within budget. So,
Either way, we could, the way I was envisioning, and of course, we don't have to do it this way, but my simple brain, I'm thinking we have a big list of unmet needs, and then we know what everybody's unmet needs are, and then we start figuring out how they're going to be paid. You prioritize.
yeah, but
everyone's needs.
that'll be a committee, but in terms of the practicality. In the past, I know that there have been unmet needs schedules and carryover schedules kind of served a similar purpose. They were general dollar, like line item figures essentially. And then it was between the program and OMB and you know, the setup of business units or to develop a budget for each of them. And I guess colleagues, my preference would be is that we have each of the programs revise their budgets so that they're passing it in their regular budget, and it's not something on top of it. We could still clarify later issues or somewhere in the budget, comprehensive budget document that we made these additional allocations above the base allocation, but I feel like I've seen sometimes where they deviated from what was supposed to be allocated to an unmet need and it into something else. Or just having some staff.
Well, I'm gonna ask the committee members if there are any other further thoughts on the discussion before we go back to Mr. Claudia.
Well, I didn't understand, I let her know I didn't understand what she meant. All I knew is, well, what I'm curious about here is you're saying the divisions, the programs have changed exhibit E, but that's already been approved by their oversight, so I'm not really following how they would change exhibit E. And I'm just looking for, I just want to develop a listing of unmet needs, and OMB actually helps us with that unmet need listing. So maybe OMB can shed some light on how we can move forward.
Okay, thank you. I'm making the clarification. Mr. Claudia?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate Carnegie. That's exactly what I was gonna say. The best way to handle unmet needs, we should probably ask OMB what their recommendation is on how to do it. As I'm sitting here, I have 3 different pieces of paper that have 3 different dollar figures for unmet needs. And so, we're not trying to change anything that's already been done by RDC. That's been approved in the final resolution for RDC. But the dollar amount of the unmet needs and the line items for unmet needs, it sounds like those need to be changed. And by the time these unmet needs need to be dealt with in some way, by the time the comprehensive budget legislation is dropped, or at some point that would happen. So I would recommend that we ask OMB, do we want one giant long exhibit of unmet needs for all programs, and then the council can then prioritize, or do we want each individual program to figure out how they're going to move things around, reallocate, because if you change something here to cover an unmet need, you're going to necessarily take money from somewhere else. So do we want to go piecemeal, resolution by resolution by resolution, exhibit by exhibit, and have each program be responsible for figuring out how they're going to cover that unmet need within their budget? Or do we just want to compile everybody's unmet needs into a big list? So I'm just saying we can do it however the committee desires. And I would just recommend to ask them how best it would be best to do it for them. So.
Thank you, Mr. Coffey. Ms. Francisco. What is your advice?
Madam Chair, members of the committee. We usually do it by program as we're in, like we would do DCD. And then we would, you guys are making your recommendations where you're taking the money from, and we just keep track that way, and then we just go off what was approved by the oversight on exhibit E. So we would go by that document to provide the unmet needs list.
Thank you, Ms. Francisco. And then I think one of the questions was in the meantime, because particularly to the division of community development and the suggestions made by the committee already to quantify the unmet needs. From a documentation standpoint, we can't, how would you advise us and Office of Legislative Council to continue to document that at this point, or is often in the budget also documenting it too?
Madam Chair, members of the committee. Yes, only staff will be documenting what the changes are, and they will keep track of it. But most of the time we go with what's on exhibit E from the oversight. Unless BNF makes changes to exhibit E.
Okay.
then we keep track of them.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks for that.
Thank you. I'd like to offer this protocol. So just like with the conditions and appropriations and legislative concerns, if the committee members seeking to fund or flag an unmet need for consideration of a by the committee, it's their responsibility to maintain that information and then work with the office, whether it's the council and Mr. Potty and Peggy on the OLS side to have it recorded. And then at the end of considering all of these budgets, we will review that listing, we'll all come together, review the listing, we'll figure out how and what we can fund from excess PTF, personal life savings, the 20 million, whatever it is. But I don't think that should be the responsibility of all, that should be responsibility of the delegates. And then when we approve that, we should issue a directive to work with the programs and have them update their budgets so that this is reflected in the budget that we're approving for them. Not that it's a generalized schedule at the end, or exhibit at the end of the comprehensive budget legislation, but that's reflected in the actual point twos. There and all their budget points, I'm sorry, all their budget points.
That is your question or response to the suggestion you said right there.
I just, is that the same suggestion that I made?
And really this is what she means.
I just don't know. I'm just asking, we're gonna add an unmet need of the 4.9 million. And if we could just track that, and then we'll see if we can get funding or what funding we can to create that unmet need. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm quickly putting together a quick template and I'll send that out to everyone for the funding needs. Is that agreeable? Is that acceptable?
Yeah.
Make it easier.
I mean, similar to legislative concerns, like we can just email you as long as they satisfy with everything. I guess that to me is.
That's what you said.
Okay, Mr. Bobby says, Delegate Crowdy verbally asked, for. If you might be something else, did you take notes in this one or anything that way? We can move forward.
Madam Chair, I have this 4.9 million that the delegate party wishes to be added as an unmet needs from BC.
Let's clarify that. Shut in Delegate Crowdy, was that the only 4.9 million?
Is that all you need for your programs collectively?
4.9, yes.
4.9? I will just.
All right, thank you, Mr. Poppy. Are there any other questions?
They would try to hide it from me.
Today? Shut it. Yeah, question? No. Delegate Day, yeah.
Or is it CPM?
No, my words are saying that, yeah, average.
Just one comment.
Which department is this covering? All of it, CPMD?
Mr. Chair, I want to just let the chairman know that the audit based on having monthly meetings with them. And it's not that. So it's audit.
Thank you, Delegate Andres. Okay, thank you all for any other questions or comments on the report from the research and development here and. Third call. So third call for questions. Okay,
That's your job.
hearing none, I'm gonna carry you for closing comments.
Okay, so members of Budget and Finance Committee, Shahatnon. So just examining the exhibits that were attached to the legislation or the resolution from RDC, I noticed that under Exhibit D, the conditions of appropriation are both similar. I know that one of the condition of appropriation was to have DCD administration and ASC go back and do a cost benefit analysis from 8 ASC centers to 5 ASC centers and the pros and cons. So I'd like to request of the committee that we do have to put in the, accurate language that was approved per our, meeting, minutes for Exhibit D, because this is not accurate, number one. So we most likely have to replace Exhibit D. The next one is going to Exhibit C that is attached to the resolution and taking that $969,000 plus from CHID, where there was a strong opposition of taking those funds from CHID as a services as needed. I'd like to request to Budget and Finance Committee that there has been talks internally with Division of Community Development to request for carryover again to where the $969,222 now will supplement the insufficient funds to cover the salaries and fringe benefits for account maintenance specialist positions within the 23 non-certified chapters to prevent interruptions of chapter services, so that SHID will keep their $900,000+, which would also have to be an amendment or a change to Exhibit A and B of what is attached to the resolution of RDC. So I just want to make that as a final comment, and I stand to get Budget and Finance Committee's recommendation. So back to you, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Vice Chair Slater, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and I understand the request for the carryover. I think Doug did, and I both stated on the record that if there's any carryover request in the budget, that we're gonna vote against the budget, so you're not gonna get that. You have the chair not voting, so you need 22 votes in order to have a carryover request. It's a 90% threshold, and that's been communicated throughout the budget process since last year. So that I don't see, unless this whole DCD budget goes to District 11 for some reason, there's no way I'm going to vote for carryover requests. Yeah, split it in, so it's just. There has to be a different view on how to fund those proposals, and we're open to looking at it. But that should be in the context of an unmet need and not a carryover request. And so if you need to amend your unmet need request based off of this information, then I advise you to work with the chair and provide them information back to the committee.
Thank you, Vice Chair Slater. Okay. Can anybody members?
Actually, no, I haven't.
What were you gonna say? Or no?
And it's just not Honorable Slater himself, it's sponsored the carryover legislation. A lot of so RDC and Madam Chair Charleston. Yeah. But they sponsored that legislation and carryover.
So I was gonna ask if this resolution needs to be fixed. I don't think we should either wait before we vote on it for it to be completed, because I have 3 versions of it. So I don't want to vote on it because it's the resolution we're voting on.
Except the report.
Oh,
It's your report.
We're not final authority.
I know we're not final reporting, but we don't have the correct resolution.
You do agree, right?
Chair Jesus said it needs to be updated.
So the resolution with Exhibit D, I have a concern with, because it's not the accurate conditions of appropriation that was recorded in RDC meeting minutes. So if you actually look at these 2 items that are listed on Exhibit D, they're basically the same thing, but one is supposed to be scratched with another condition of appropriation that's where they're supposed to do the cost benefit analyses from 8 ASC centers to 5, and taking those costs sharings and see where that can be put in with additional services for ASC staff to provide to the chapter 5 regions. So that was a condition of appropriation.
Thank you, Chair. Has used to talk, how do you advise the committees move forward?
At this point, we have final oversight committee resolutions. If the chair of the committee is, I mean, that's what I'm hearing, is changes to the budgets and things like that are desired. There's no voting on amending this legislation. Again, it's simply getting the desired changes and edits to the documents, whatever the exhibits may be, A to E. Getting those desired changes and edits recorded, so we know how to fix them, so legislative council knows how to write them, so OMB knows how to fix everything in preparation for the comprehensive budget legislation. So that's all we're doing at this point. So today, the committee would be simply voting on the report that's been given. Not voting to change anything in that resolution.
Mr. Body, I think the committee understands that, but the point was raised that the documents that the chair of research and development committee had mentioned to the committee are not correct. So one of the members raised that, how would the budget and finance committee then vote?
There's a solution, so. In the legislature, the chair already signed it, so you can't go back and change things after it's been engrossed on this. But the information that the chair shared, that's that not being included in the conditions of legislative concern, it's contained in the body of the resolution, so we still have that information to reflect upon. And Mr. Foggy can, if the committee wants to, can then add that in as a legislative concern or a COA in the comprehensive budget. And she'll just note that now and say that information or we should know.
Okay.
Mr. Body, can you just note that for the resolution?
Actually, Madam Chair, and honorable delegates later, I think it's correct if things need to be done, it would be a simple matter of the committee saying, we direct OMB and OLC to correct these in preparation for a comprehensive budget. This is a simple directive, I think would be fine. Do you agree with that, Ms. Martin? I know.
Should have told Hampshire Buddy with the budget and finance committee did it in the last couple of years. My question is, hypothetically say that right now, that the budget and finance committee are, I motion to just hypothetically say this on DCD administration budget, business unit 108001. I want to make an amendment for them to move $2,000 from the office supplies and add that into vehicle rental. That's not done now.
Mr. Body?
Again, we, no matter whether the exhibits are correct or incorrect, we have the final legislation, so. I think it's just a matter of making sure OMB and OLC prepare, do the changes that are requested that are being discussed today.
Mr. Body, the question is more about the formality of this meeting. What action can the committee take at this time?
I think the committee should do a directive. And direct OMB and OLC to make the necessary changes in preparation for drafting the comprehensive budget legislation.
But the question was based on an action, not specific to the resolution. So what actions can the committee take today?
Approve the report. With acknowledging the directive, not because I think it's important for the committee on the record to acknowledge that these exhibits are not correct.
Okay, so I'd like to ask for a revisit then on this, revisit on this. And revisit and chair and Madam Chair and see. The revisit is to make sure that we get the right documents and then we can put that together. So at the revisit, you'll have the way that I remember we did it before was that you motion second and then I would amend we would amend that resolution. So that's all in the transcript. Because back in 2000, you know what, when I start saying back in 2000, I always refer back to Dominic Bial. I'm like, okay, now I'm turning into Dominic Bial, because every time Dominic Bial tells something, you always tell the story, you know? Well, back in 2016, the budget and finance committee then started moving dollars around everywhere. And we approved it that year, but specifically then, the Resource and Development Committee led by Karen Shepherd was very upset because there was no record of it in the, where the Budget and Finance Committee moved these dollars around, so they had a hard time. We just gave them, like we would say, Council Castillo, you need to come back with new budget forms and you can take $2,000 from here and add that over here. Or most of the time it'd be like promotional items or bonuses that they would take those dollars out of them. But there was no record prior to 2016. In 2017, there was a change, and that change was to say that we would put that in the record, in the transcript, like in the committee report, to say that this is what the Budget and Finance Committee did to move money around from certain business unit numbers to other business unit numbers, just similar as how the creative committee, you fill out that little form that says transfer funds from here business unit number to another business unit. That's what the committee has the oversight to do. The Budget and Finance Committee has the oversight to do. So I don't know why we're not doing that now. That's my question.
I understand, I really understand. There's no legislation in front of the committee. So there's no Budget and Finance Committee voting to approve the legislation in one form or another. However, I do think it's important to have a record so that BNF can say, here's what we were given, here's what was posted on this, here's the final oversight committee resolution, and here's how we're going to change it. Okay, so I think what would be most appropriate right now is what you mentioned, is revisit on this report. Don't vote to accept the report at this point. Vote to accept the report when you want to accept the report, when the report provides corrected documents as you want it changed. Does that make sense?
Madam Chair, my question, I guess, back to you then is, when I motion for, do I motion or do I stay this or revisit, because Madam Chair says there needs to be corrections on the forms. Then I guess my second one is that do we ask Mr. Calvin Castillo then to do a revisit, at that revisit to have a new updated recommended unmet needs budget form as well? I guess that's my request, and have that revisit.
You could table the report and have them come back with the corrected document. It's very hard for the committee to approve anything unless you have things all fixed in front of you.
I guess my question back to Madam Chair is that on the revisit, when we do have a revisit on exhibit B, are you as the chair of the Resource and Development Committee, are you it's not a problem for you, for us to ask with the unmet need here?
So
I'm trying to look for it. So kind of first look for respect, but even sometimes out of being respectful, I mean, this is not, we're not going to agree all the time, but I mean, the committee's still going to do it, but I just want to know if you're okay with it.
yeah,
Is that something that you're looking at, different approach as well? That's my question to Madam Chair.
yeah, thank you, Speaker Damon and members of Budget and Finance Committee. And again, this being at the stage of negotiating budget for DCD, and I wholeheartedly, agree that we need to really expedite these projects under CPMD. I do not have a problem with the additional request for the dollar amounts for, I guess, contractual services, as it's stated in the unmet needs statement that DCD had shared here with us, which will be utilized for number one, current operations of 1.8 million, 1.1 for additional staffing and operation, and a $2 million building code inspection, which totals 4,952,590. So I don't have a problem with that. But for due process purposes, I guess my question would be to your legal counsel. Do I need to take this back to the Resources and Development Committee? Why I pose this question is the committee had requested, and again, this is a typo. This is not supposed to be 50,000 on Exhibit E. It's supposed to be 150,000 for Solid Waste Management Department. This is the other error that our advisor might have made, or not might, had made. So this is the other area that I have a concern. So with that, if we're going to add this, I just want to get the consensus of my RDC colleagues to say, okay, this is what was negotiated and this is the recommendation from Budget and Finance, because we have to get project built out for the New Mexico ICI capital outlay projects and other projects from TIF and whatnot. So I don't have a problem, but those are the two forms that need to be changed, I've noticed.
Thank you, Chair Jesus. Mr. Fahmy, in regards to the questions about making the modifications in this negotiation portion of the resolution, what do you have further advice?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this. I think the best way to do this is, at this point, the committee is just accepting or not accepting the report. I think that the committee can simply table this and have a revisit on this report. And then the Madam Chair Jesus can come back with revised exhibits and such. And then I think at a later date, we should specify the date when the revisit will occur. And Ms. Nakai can discuss that as far as the date. I think when the revisit occurs, then the revised exhibits, corrected exhibits can be presented and the report can be accepted in that manner. So then we'll at least have an accepted report, and the report will include corrected documents. And then from there, either the committee could probably do a directive at that point and say, these documents accepted in the context of this report on the revisit will be used to prepare the comprehensive budget legislation. That's how my thought process is working, and that's what I would recommend if that makes sense.
And Mr. Fahmy, I think the question posed whether the chair goes back to Resources and Development.
No, Madam Chair, Jesus and Parrish. There is no, in the Appropriations Act, there's no procedure for that. So we are now stuck with these oversight committee resolutions. And actually, these are recommendations to BNF. And then BNF then makes its recommendations. So it's all recommendations until it gets to council. So these are simply, if you look at the title of the resolution, it says recommending to Budget and Finance Committee. So unfortunately, we're faced with a situation where we have incorrect exhibits attached to the recommendation. So if in the context of the report that should be on this legislation, and in the context of these negotiations that are occurring between the Oversight Committee and Budget and Finance Committee, you're simply giving a report and you're saying, here's corrected documents in my report.
Okay.
And so would you please accept my report manually? You didn't accept it 2-3 days ago because I didn't have the corrected documents, but now I do. So please accept the report. And then I would then suggest why I can prepare a directive for BFC to then say, we've accepted this report on, August 20th, whatever the day is. We're directing OMB and OLC to use these corrected documents to prepare the comprehensive budget legislation. but not go back to the committees. Okay. Amend anything. That's how I see everything. I hope that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pawnee, for explaining that to the research and development chair about the status of the resolution. And today, members, we do have a motion and a second to accept the report. However, the limits of the issue brought up with the documentation for the legislation and also the modification to the. Would anyone like to?
Motion table report.
Thank
We'll
you.
revisit. We have our new budget forms. I don't know what specifically for, new budget documents and then also new to the unmet needs. That's what.
Yes, Seth Damon. So there's a motion to table. And there's a second to take report by Delegate Gay. So again, as Vice Chair mentioned, there's no debate on table. A motion. Right, can we go to public on the motion table?
Yes, I'm sure we'll also on the table. Any vote?
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, we do.
Agree? Any vote? Thank you. Honorable Amber, any votes? I said I agree. Honorable, Mark Slater, any votes?
Red. I don't think.
Honorable Slater votes red, Honorable Santini votes green.
Whatever happens now, we
have one closing.
Cannot be.
It's in your file. We don't have to correctly, in the resolution. It's in the direct report of the resolution, or other than this.
You should see how hard we get.
You read it?
We're being backlit, we're being back Google.
Yeah, I need some backup. I don't want to chair today, just about. The UK friends the wrong. This is the wrong page. Go to John.
We didn't know that.
And we're in a committee there with us.
No.
Thank you, Chair Hastings.
Okay. So this is right down.
Yeah. You guys are looking at the fight, what is an examination? Later.
They wanted to write something and being that the.
Okay, thank you, Sheldon, for taking us off unmute. We will, go to the committee, and Doug, we, like to go to. Resolution number?
It is, at the end.
It's just under water rights commission.
There's no resolution, it's just a report, it's just a report.
Yeah.
It was
Report on the water.
commission.
Okay, so we're gonna go to water rights commission.
Motion.
The motion by.
We have a motion to suspend the floor, we'll bring it back, and then we have to, oh, they're already motion to. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm gonna, a motion to suspend the floor rules to recall the water rights committee report.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Doug, as a second motion. Camera, is there any comments or questions about the report? Second call. Third call. I think that, it's also, can you do a roll call vote on the motion? You can suspend for rules.
Yes, I'm not sure. Roll call on the commission of the rules.
Bring.
Okay, thank you. One, three.
Thank you, I was available on the screen.
Thank you all. Have a great lunch.
Thank you, I was also able to screen.
I don't know when we gave any votes. Madam Chair, we have 4 members voting in affirmative, 0 opposing, 4 members not voting, Madam Chair, not voting, Madam Chair. Thank you, Nelson, thank you for the members for taking action on this item. At this time, I'm going to before we get into.
She's keeping that.
Yes, I mean, yes, I'm going to, enter executive session. So no longer than 25 minutes.
Mr. Slater has a motion to go into executive session on the report from water. Do you have a second? Doug, I'm going to second the motion.
I request to, who has a question? I don't have any questions, but I have a question. I don't have any questions. I mean, we accept the report as it's, yeah. Okay, that's.
Okay, wait, give me 1 minute.
Why are they- it's, you know, this,
It is. Which it is.
But they're supposed to give us a report, we didn't know that, right? They're supposed to give us a report every 6 months, we haven't received a report.
This is what's here.
Yeah.
So, you know, I guess we should want to be what's here. Yeah.
So the starting one.
Yes. Perfect. So.
And, the only thing is that we need to talk in executive session about your additional unmet needs.
Oh, okay, there is.
Yeah, there's exhibit.
I was gonna. Ignore that, because we can't allocate it.
I just sent you the link.
Okay, so right now, the committee would like to resolve itself in. Further discussion on the report?
Michelle? Yes. And Jason. And a lady.
I will bring them.
Does anybody want a motion to enter into executive session? Vice Chair Slater, motion to go into executive session to get an order. Doug, under second the motion, and now the discussion, so this all needs to be a call vote to go into executive session. We identified the party.
Yeah, I want the water rate commission chair. Are you DOJ attorneys?
No.
No, I'm the administrative legal secretary for Michelle, Nancy, Water Rights Unit.
You are, okay, well, but you're with DOJ, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yes.
And we're commission.
And commission, chair is Zeus. And then the staff they have in the room, and Michelle Brown, yeah.
And Mr. John.
Oh, yeah, just, yeah.
And Madam AG.
How about Mr. So? What's his role?
Oh, he's behind Brenda, I didn't see.
I
Yeah, no, sorry, Sean.
Nobody's employee, but it's.
But I think that's,
Well,
Oh, my gosh.
Okay, the identified parties have been named, and now we're going to go into the down in the yard research.
We're all like him. He's like, oh, you got.
Roll call vote on the concession name, where also wants to get rid of the. Martin, can you vote? Okay, Martin, Quinn, Arnold Martin, Gay, how do you vote?
what?
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Arnold Martin, Gay, votes green. Arnold Sartain, how do you vote? Thank you, Arnold Sartain, votes red. Arnold Crosslayer, how do you vote? Thank you, Arnold Crosslayer, votes green. Arnold, how do you vote? Green, please. Thank you. Madam Chair, we have 4 members voting and the affirmative, 1 opposing. Madam Chair, not voting, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Nelson, for taking roll call vote. We will enter into executive session at 12:40 and we will come back at 1:05.